Hey everybody, Rhadamant here. Thanks for tuning in to the very first episode of Kerbal Space Program. So let's start a new campaign here. We're going to be on normal difficulty, but with crews not able to respawn. And that way, dead is dead, which is the way I like it. Live with my mistakes. It does allow us to quick save, quick load, and revert, however. But I'll try to use that sparingly. In this Let's Play, I'm going to do my very best to explain what I'm doing, but not so much in detail that it slows me down. So the first thing I'm going to do is go into the mission control here and accept the first two and the easiest two missions, which is gather scientific data from Kerbal and launch the first vessel. Let's go into the vehicle assembly building, plop down a command pod, empty the command pod of all of its monopropellant. We're not going to need that. Slap a parachute on the top, and slap a solid booster on the bottom. Put those to different stages. Reduce the amount of fuel in the solid booster to just a teeny little bit, because we don't actually have to launch very far. It just said launch. And then we are almost all set to go. We'll add 2 little goo containers for science. And now we're done. That's it. That is a very min-maxed first vessel. Alright, and before we launch, which is spacebar, let's observe the goo container while on Kerbal and keep the experiment. Hit spacebar, or hit T first, which helps stabilize the vessel, uses the pilot's ability to steer it sort of smoother. Hit spacebar, teeny little launch, observe the other goo container, and then trigger our parachute. Parachute's fully deployed. The only thing to know about the parachute is you need enough parachutes to reduce your speed down to less than 9 meters per second. Any higher and things will break on re-entry, generally speaking. The tolerance for collision is about 9 meters per second for most things. Some landing legs and whatnot have higher tolerances. Now we've landed. That achieves both of, well, soon will achieve both of my contracts. I'm going to have Jebediah then get an EVA report from the launch pad and then reboard. So the way to do that is go to EVA here, right click on them, EVA report, but I already did one. I can get another one, doesn't really hurt me. And then B is reboard. We can only have one EVA report in this pod at once, so I had to dump the old one and recover. And this will unlock science for us, which gives us access to better parts. So we got 23 science total. Our ship was fully refunded because we landed back at the launch pad, basically. And let's go into R&D. Let's get Engineering 101 and Basic Rocketry. And then let's go ahead and take a look at some of the additional contracts. So you should definitely watch the fine details of the contracts, because some are a lot easier to do than others. On my difficulty, I can decline contracts and it doesn't cost me anything. Sometimes it will cost you something. So for instance, test heat shield splashdown is going to be pretty easy. And let's see if I can get one other test heat shield landed. Alright, I'll do both. And this will help pay for additional science in the future. Alright, so let's go ahead and leave the goo containers on. I have 2 missions now. One to test the heat shield when I land. So let's go ahead and do that one. I'm going to add a fuel tank and a swivel engine. And which heat shield? The smaller one. Alright, and we'll call this RHD2. Save and launch. Now, as you may have noticed, I don't even have a parachute here. I'm not planning on The only thing we need to do to test this heat shield is to run the test, because I'm already landed. I haven't even launched yet, but I'm already done. Now, the reason why I engineered this ship a bit more than that is because the next part is going to be a little bit more challenging. Well, not by much, but a little bit more challenging regardless. All right, so what we're going to do is to put the other heat shield here, but then on top of it have a parachute, which I know looks a little strange. And we'll also just call this RHD2 because this isn't a significant difference between the previous ship. I'm leaving them all with unique names because I think it will be fun to look back at how they've changed. So what I'm going to aim to do is we need to test this splashed down, which means ocean. So as you can see here, I'm going to launch with a swivel engine with liquid fuel so that I can steer it way more capably. As you can see here, we are aiming for the ocean, which easy peasy, I'm getting there. Pop the parachute. See if there's any science. Okay, there's a teeny bit of science to be had when we are still flying, so I grabbed that science. And as you can see, we're traveling a little bit faster than 9.90 meters per second, so what I can do is right when I get really, really low, I can fire up the engines and help thrust to make up the difference. And as I thrust, I actually reduce the weight of the vehicle because I'm burning up fuel. So now as we're about to be in the ocean, turn on the rockets to lessen the impact. And now all I got to do is right click on the heat shield, run test. I've completed the other contract. We'll observe the goo in the ocean, which is different than from the landing pad. And then we also can do an EVA and an EVA report from the shores, and then reboard and recover. And this will net a fair bit of science as a result, because we entered a new biome. So we have 9.6 earned for a total of 29. Now with this additional science, I'm going to unlock survivability, because that unlocks some more science acquiring devices. Perfect. Let's take a look at my contracts. Ideally, I would like to try to escape the atmosphere right now. So I'm going to hopefully unlock a contract. Here we go. Thumper. The Thumper solid fuel booster. And escape the atmosphere. Alright, so what this contract is, let me review this, is to use a much larger solid fuel booster. And I need to get it in high altitude in space. That's my contract. So what I'm going to do is engineer a ship to do a bunch of science on the way. So I'm going to tuck my goo pods underneath the heat shield here. Then I'm going to put radial mounted parachutes. I'm going to put thermometers and barometers. And this is what I want returned back to me. I could always put this into a service bay. Maybe I will. Maybe I will. All right, let's do a service bay instead. So we'll put 2 of these goo pods into the service bay. The thermometers into the service bay. And I like to put 2 to keep things nice and balanced. Now, most of these little science objects don't weigh enough to off-balance anything. And this is what we're going to want to return back to us on the planet. So everything else is unnecessary. So I'm going to put a decoupler on the bottom, which can separate this top part from the bottom part. And then I have a mission to... Well, let's get rid of all these messages. I have a mission to bring this Thumper up to 250,000 altitude, which is very, very high. So what I'm going to do is add 4 of these. And it's telling me I am too massive to launch this, which is fine, because I have a plan. I'm going to add 4 fins to it as well, to keep it nice and stable. Alright, save and leave. Now, if I want to increase the amount that I can launch, all I got to do is go to my launch pad, pay 50 grand, and increase the weight that my launch pad can take. And then this RHD-3 can then launch. And hopefully, I didn't really do the math, but hopefully all these boosters strapped to my butt will get me high enough to complete that contract. So let's see. I'm going to open up my service bay and observe this stuff while I'm in flight, and then close it again. I'm really praying this gets me as high as I want to go. If not, I can always re-engineer and relaunch. Now when I hit M, I can see how high I'm going. I will escape the atmosphere. But the real question is, will I get up to the 250,000 mark? I'm going so fast that actually some of these engines took heat damage. Yes, I will actually hit 250,000. Perfect. Let's reopen the bay. Once I enter space, I can rerun these tests, these science experiments. All right, we are in space. So let's do a crew report. And goo. And as you can see, because we're in space, they'll give me a lot more science. Close the service bay. And then I'm going to want to be aware of my altitude because I only have 2 opportunities to trigger my test for these thumpers. I have 1 going up and 1 coming back down. My apoapsis, which is the max height, is just above the required altitude for this test. Okay, so I know what happened. All of my little winglets burned off, but that's fine. So I'm going to speed time up a little bit until I hit about 225,000 meters. Or 240. All right. Now we're almost entering the... There we go. Let's run the test. Doesn't need fuel. We just need to right-click to run the test. And I accomplished that contract. At this point, I'm going to separate from the solid boosters, point my ship, or what's left of it, downwards, so that the heat shield protects the rest of the ship. I don't really care what happens to those solid boosters. They serve their purpose. They got me out of the atmosphere into space, which is pretty cool. Now, our heat shield protects the ship. It has, the shielding value, I have 200 points of heat shielding that are being used up. Now, we're somewhat on a projectile, ballistic re-entry here, which would not work unless we were very, very, very light. So if I kept all of my giant boosters that were strapped to this, the aerobraking, which is to use the atmosphere to slow us down, probably would not have slowed us down enough, and it would have been fatal. We would have slammed back into Kerbal. But because we're teeny, it doesn't take much to slow a teeny ship down. If you have a much larger ship and you're trying to re-enter, you have to go a very gradual re-entry angle. If you go up and down, you better have a lot of drogue chutes and a lot of surface area, and really poor aerodynamics if you want to slow down. And that might heat up your ship to the point where it explodes. So you got to be careful about that. It also depends on your difficulty settings, because if you're on easy, there is not a lot of... the aerobraking is a little bit more forgiving, let's call it. I'm going to cut one of these chutes because we don't need two of them. One will slow us down enough. I had two chutes so that the ship was balanced, but we don't need two deployed to stop our descent. Alright, and a gentle touchdown. And in fact, we are in a new biome here, so I'm going to EVA and do a little crew report. And we're in the mountains, and then I'm going to reboard and recover. And this should give us a lot of science, a lot more than we've been getting for the previous missions, because we actually got to space this time. We're actually a space program. So I earned just shy of 60, as you can see. Because we landed kind of close to KSC, we got almost 96% of our ship's value back that was not detached. That's a key important difference. The solid boosters that I detached slammed and blew up, and they got destroyed, and I didn't get refunded for them. Alright, so mission control. I got both of those missions, as you can see. And let's clear the messages for them. Now at this point, I've upgraded my launch pad once so that it can take heavier vehicles and taller vehicles. What I really want to do is be able to upgrade my vehicle assembly building, but the problem is this is a steep cost, so I need to make some money, right? I eventually want to be able to upgrade most of the things here. So let's think about money, right? Let's try to take some missions here that are easy to do and net a lot of money. A lot of the ferrying tourists give you some pretty good money. So if we take a look at these two missions, which seem to be nearly identical, one gives us more reputation than the other, even though they give us the same amount of money. I'm gonna actually accept both because I'm happy to do both. So these missions, what they are, is to get a suborbital space flight for 8 different people, for a group of 4 and a group of 4. You can do them one at a time, but that's kind of slow and expensive. So I'm going to attempt to do them sort of all at once. Not all at once, but probably 2 flights. So in order to do that, let's cancel. We'll call this RHD Tourist. We'll save it. I need to unlock some additional parts from research and development. So what I need to unlock is... First, we'll get all the next tier tech. And then I need to unlock general construction right here to get the crew cabin. I wouldn't really be able to... I could, but it would be very difficult to get all the tourists up to space without a crew cabin for them. Now, if we go to utility, I can slap 2 crew cabins onto my ship, just like that. And then we'll be able to carry 4 people at once. So now what I need to do is to make sure that this ship can get into space. And I want to get into space just barely. I don't want to go like way beyond, because basically that will cost me a lot more money, right? So I think what I'm going to try to do is design a ship that takes me there and that I bring all the parts home. That'd be very, very, very cool. If I could do that, because then it would not be very expensive to make these trips. So what I'm going to try, I don't know if this is possible, what I'm going to try is to fill this ship up with parachutes and drogue chutes. I'm going to put the drogue chutes on their own stage, put all the engines on their own stage. Now this is definitely enough delta V, which is sort of the change in sort of the miles per gallon, as you can think of it. I'm going to use struts to strut this structure together. They're not going to have much of a view if this does work. And we will fill it with 4 tourists. I'm additionally going to put some winglets on it. Make sure that it's lined up nicely. And let's see if this tourist ship actually works. I don't know for certain it will. It's heavy, it's big, it's cumbersome. But it was very, very cheap to launch. And if I can recover the ship, it will be cheap to relaunch too. So we have Jebediah piloting, and as you can see, we are somewhat tilting. I'm trying to fight the tilt, but I actually don't want to fight too hard because I do want to tilt towards 90, as that will get us closer to KSC when we land. So if I was to make changes to this ship, it would be to add more winglets, maybe. And we're just going to be shy of the mark here. We're just not quite enough bang for the buck. So what I'll do is slap a hammer on the bottom, but that gives us too many parts. Okay, so let's see. What can I do about that? I'm going to put 2 drogue chutes and let's hope this does it. I wanted, maybe we could do without these struts, because they count as parts. And see if we can't double up on the winglets for a little bit more control. Now my only worry is we don't have enough chutes to safely land, but time will tell. Alright, so we have a little bit more bang. Oh, and nope. These struts were very necessary as the ship sort of tore itself apart. So we are at the parts limit here. I added the struts, but I added them up top. Okay, with any luck, this will do. It's definitely tilting on me. But again, tilting towards 90, which is fine, as long as we make it up to the edge of space. Little do these tourists know how slapdash this ship is. Okay, that's all of our solid fuel, and again, we are just barely not able to make it. All right. One more thing I could do is, we have, what, 28 parts? Let's try to keep it to the 30 limit. I could always pay to have it, be, yeah, why not? Let's have this be really silly looking. There we go. We could fix this. This also gives our passengers a better view. Alright, so we are at 29 parts, but we have another big rocket. Very trial and error here. Will this get us? Oh, maybe. I think it looks good. The atmosphere will slow us down, which is why our apoapsis is decreasing. But we will be, in fact, at the edge of space. And let's actually view from their perspective here. So this is what it looks like for them. They have to share their cabins, but here we are. We're in space. And the contract is complete. So we'll just speed time up. And now for the real question. Can this survive re-entry? Because this is a very ballistic trajectory. And I'm feeling like it won't, but I'm not sure. It might be too big and heavy for aerobraking to cause enough drag. But I could be wrong, and hopefully I am. Alright, we just launched the drogue chutes, which will help slow us. Oh! No, maybe it will work. Now, with these chutes fully deployed, as they're not fully deployed yet. Oh, yeah, there we go. We have enough parachutes. Looks crazy. But we are obviously under the 9 meters per second mark, which means that we'll safely land without splashing down and killing everyone. Well, that makes me happy. That my space program will not have committed murder of my customers. So here's our gentle splashdown. And recovery of the vehicle. And money in my pocket. That's what I'm looking for. And we'll have one more of these contracts to do. So let's just go straight to the launch pad and relaunch Tourist, filling the extra slots up with tourists, and launch. And this will allow us to then spend some money to upgrade the vehicle assembly building, as that is the whole purpose of this launch. And the beauty of this is because I don't have any detachable parts, we recover just about the entire cost of the craft. In fact, at the end of this flight, we can do a nice comparison of what percentage do we get back. I'm doing a much better job of controlling the tilt here. I'm purposely tilting a little bit to 90 so that we can try to get back at KSC, but not tilting so far as to end up deep in the ocean. All right. I'm going to speed time up a bit. Continue on this beautiful arc. We're almost into space. Come on, all the way into space. And back down. As you can see, we're going to land pretty close to KSC here. Let's point the ship. Tilting as best we can for re-entry. Oh boy. Normally, I over-engineer my ships because I know how easy things can go wrong. So it kind of gives me butterflies in my stomach when I don't have a super over-engineered ship. Like this thing is definitely not over-engineered. And I'm sort of seat of my pants re-entering a giant craft back into orbit. But we're just off the coast of KSC. You, in fact, can even see it here. All right, slowing down, slowing down. Soon I'll be able to use the drogue chutes. So if we end up using our normal chutes too soon, without slowing down, they'll be damaged and destroyed, and then we'll splash down and die. So that's the use of the drogue chutes. The drogue chutes are smaller, so they don't cause so much drag as to get torn apart. That's the sort of idea. All right, now the crazy flopping. Whoa, it's... There we go. Now all the chutes are deployed and the ship is gently returning back to the planet. And this is a career mode, so I am responsible and on the hook for funds and science and all that good stuff. And also permanent death, which is why I had to take some tourists to space in order to fund my space program further. Let's let them turn on some lights this time. Burn up all my electrical charge. And now for the final re-entry. Splashing down. This time, some parachutes stayed deployed to prevent me from toppling over so quickly. If you have a really, really, really tall craft, sometimes you can land, topple over, and get destroyed on the topple. So, taking a look at this, we refunded 9,581 funds. The total cost of the ship is... we have to go into the VAB for that. 12,000. So if I turned all of my boosters to no fuel, as you can see, we basically spend 300 funds to bring Taurus to space. That is pretty economical. And that's because I don't have any detachable parts here. Well, guys, that's all the time I have for today. If you enjoyed the Kerbal Space Program series so far, please let me know. What you can expect in the future is for me to chase down milestones like getting to Minmus, getting to Mun, getting to Duna, etc., but then I'll also take suggestions from you guys so that, you know, if you want me to make a giant Mun base or a giant Duna base, I could do that. If you feel like I didn't explain anything very well or not enough, drop me a comment. I'm happy to respond to any questions, and I do hope that you tune in next time. Thank you all for watching. Adios.